We hear phrases like justice and law and order thrown around all the time, right? But are they just pretty words on a page, or do they actually drive the nuts and bolts of the English legal system? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive question. Does the English legal system actually uphold the rule of law? To figure that out, we literally have to throw out the textbook principles for a second and look at how these concepts shape real life. Okay, let's dive into this with a wild hypothetical. What if Parliament passes a law giving a government minister unlimited power to detain absolutely anyone they consider troublesome? Just think about that for a second. The law might have followed every single proper parliamentary rule to the letter. It is technically legally passed, but the wording is incredibly vague, and that power is just ripe for abuse. So, would this satisfy the rule of law simply because Parliament rubber-stamped it? Definitely not. It reveals this stark, absolutely crucial difference between merely passing a law and passing a just law. So what exactly is the rule of law anyway? Basically, it's a gold standard promising three non-negotiable things. Government power is tightly controlled, laws are crystal clear, and everyone, no matter who they are, is treated equally. You see, the rule of law isn't just some lofty academic philosophy. It is a rigorous, demanding standard against which every single institution, every statute, and every government decision has to be tested. To see how the English system holds up, we're going to put it through a three-part stress test. First, we're testing the lawmaking process. Second, we're looking at fairness in the legal system. And third, we'll examine the actual content of the law itself. All right, phase one of our stress test, testing the lawmaking process. Let's look at how a law is actually built right at the foundational level. Well, for any legal system to actually work, its creation process can't be some big secret happening in the shadows. Laws absolutely must be clear, they must be public, and they have to be stable. But critically, they have to be prospective, meaning they only apply to your future behavior. I mean, it would be fundamentally unfair to change the rules of the game after you've already made your play, right? As a citizen, you absolutely must be able to find out what the law says before you can be punished for breaking it. And this brilliantly illustrates how the UK's legislative stages are deliberately designed to prevent unchecked power from being unleashed on everyday citizens. Normally, proposed legislation has to battle its way through the House of Commons and then the House of Lords. The whole thing involves extensive debate, fierce amendment, and intense scrutiny. The House of Lords, for instance, acts as a massive checkpoint. They can spot glaring problems and essentially force the Commons to pause and reconsider. But right here, we slam into a massive tension: parliamentary sovereignty versus the rule of law. You see, because Parliament is entirely sovereign in the UK, it has the legal authority to pass acts that grant incredible, sweeping, discretionary powers to government ministers. And here is the kicker. Unlike Supreme Courts in countries like the US, UK courts cannot normally just strike down an act of Parliament just because it feels unfair. So you end up in this crazy situation where a law might be 100% legally valid while simultaneously gutting the very values behind the rule of law. Now, let's be real. Parliament is incredibly busy. They literally cannot write every single granular, highly specific rule themselves, so they delegate. They hand over lawmaking abilities directly to ministers and other government bodies. And while that's practically necessary to keep the country running, it absolutely demands strict controls. Enter judicial review. This is a vital mechanism that allows judges to step in, tap the brakes, and ensure a public body hasn't gone rogue and acted way beyond the specific powers Parliament originally gave them. It's the ultimate check on massive government overreach. Okay, moving on to part two of our stress test, fairness in the legal system. Let's talk about the courts, the judges, and how justice is actually administered. The entire rule of law completely falls apart if you don't have fiercely independent and impartial courts. Judges have to be totally untouchable by political pressure. They must be able to decide cases without ministers, parliament, or wealthy individuals breathing down their necks. And in the UK, this duty is explicitly locked down by the Constitutional Reform Act of 2005. This act officially recognizes the rule of law and legally demands that government ministers uphold and protect judicial independence, no exceptions. And once you're inside those independent courts, the principles of natural justice are totally non-negotiable. It works like this. You always have the right to know exactly what the case is against you, and you must have a fair opportunity to actually respond in front of an unbiased court. If it's a criminal case, you are presumed innocent. Full stop. The prosecution has to rigorously prove your guilt so that the court is completely, absolutely sure. No one should ever lose their liberty or be imprisoned without these strict, lawful, and fair proceedings. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive glaring gap between textbook theory and reality. We're talking formal equality versus equality in practice. Look, a fair legal system has to be accessible, but your legal rights have practically zero value if you can't actually afford a lawyer, or if you're drowning in excessive court fees or stuck waiting years just to get a hearing. Cuts to legal aid have created this severe, undeniable divide. So the exact same law might apply to everyone on paper, but in reality, not everyone has the money to actually use it. Which brings us to the final leg of our stress test, the content of the law itself. Let's see if the actual substantive rules hold up. The state can't just lock you away on a whim. The actual content of criminal law acts as a powerful shield, demanding strict proof and specific requirements. It directly props up the rule of law by setting maximum punishments and explicitly outlawing those vague or retrospective offenses we talked about earlier. Basically, the rigid legal requirements of a specific offense have to be fully met before the state can even think about punishing you. And then there's civil law, which essentially gives you the legal teeth to bite back. Think about it. You've got tort law compensating you if someone harms you, contract law stepping in when promises are broken, consumer legislation protecting you from sketchy big businesses, and, of course, human rights law fiercely guarding your liberty and your right to a fair trial. Together, all these branches actively empower everyday citizens to challenge abuses of power on a daily basis. So after all of this, is the rule of law and the English legal system a promise or a reality? Let's take a step back and look at the final results of our stress test. The truth is, it's not just a simple pass or fail. It is a constantly shifting, highly dynamic balance. On one side of the scale, we have these vital, heavy-hitting practical safeguards: deep parliamentary scrutiny, fiercely independent courts, the massive power of judicial review, and robust legal remedies. These turn abstract ideals into real, tangible shields for citizens. But on the other side, we're constantly wrestling with remaining tensions: the absolute, towering power of parliamentary sovereignty, the vastness of ministerial discretion, and the harsh reality that high costs literally block people from accessing justice. Ultimately, the rule of law is a relentless standard against which every single law, institution, and government decision must be endlessly tested. So I'm going to leave you with this final, profound question to ask of any legal system. The real test isn't just, was this law legally created? We have to look way past the mere creation of a law and ask the hard stuff. Does this law control power? Does it protect fairness? And does it actually allow everyday people to defend their rights? Keep that question in your back pocket the next time a controversial new law hits the headlines. Thanks for exploring this with me.